It's my regular segment where I answer 5 questions or cover 5 topics that matter to me and that should matter to you and when it comes to food and health. And in case you're new around here, the reason that I picked 5 is because our body has 5 health defense systems. These systems, our circulation, our stem cells, our microbiome, our gut, our DNA, and our immune systems actually working, firing in all cylinders to keep us healthy. And my book, Eat to Beat Disease, is all about how do we actually activate our health defense systems. Now, I've got a special guest today, but before I introduce him, I want to actually let you know that my last masterclass for the month is going to be this Monday, January 31st at 8 p.m. January 31st at 8 p.m. It's a free masterclass. Sign up on the link in my bio. Okay, I'm very excited to bring on a friend and colleague, Dr. Jason Fung, who's going to talk about, wait for it, intermittent fasting. This is the topic that everybody's been hearing about. Dr. Jason Fung is a Canadian nephrologist. He's a world-leading expert in intermittent fasting. You may have seen some of his videos, and he's been treating people with diabetes. And so he's written some best-selling books about intermittent fasting and an intensive dietary management program. Let's go ahead and bring Dr. Jason Fung on.
Hey, Will.
All right. Hey, Dr. Jason Fung, welcome to my Instagram. This is great. I'm so glad that you're coming on board to my group. Tell us where you're.
I'm in Toronto, Canada.
Okay, but you're known worldwide. I know this because almost everywhere I go, somebody basically says, after hearing me talk about food and health, they're like, "Do you know about Dr. Jason Fung? Is he somebody that you're connected to?" And so I'm so glad to have you on board. So tell me a little bit about how you got into intermittent fasting, and maybe for the people watching.
That's a great question.
What is it?
Intermittent fasting? There's 2 real parts. One, of course, is not eating. So any time that you're not eating, really, you're fasting. So, and the second part is that it's voluntary. So it's not starvation. Starvation is where you have no access to food. That's not fasting. Fasting is you have access to food, you choose not to eat it. And one of the things that, how I got into it is that I treat a lot of type 2 diabetes. And as you know, there's been actually a huge obesity epidemic, which has led to a type 2 diabetes epidemic, which has led to a lot of diabetic kidney disease, and I'm a kidney specialist. So I started seeing a lot of this disease. And one of the things I realized probably about 10 years ago is that we probably were treating the whole thing not very well, because we were trying to treat the disease after it got going. But the disease name, diabetic kidney disease, actually tells you everything you need to know. It's caused by diabetes. If you want to get rid of it, you need to get rid of the diabetes. You can't treat the kidney disease after you got it. You got to treat the diabetes, which is mostly type 2 diabetes. That's like 95%. And, at the time, people were like, well, it's a chronic progressive disease. I'm like, that's baloney. That's pure baloney, because everybody knew that if you lost weight, your diabetes would either get much better or go away. So therefore, it wasn't chronic, it wasn't progressive. It was just that we weren't doing a great job of getting people to lose weight. So then I started to think about the way we treat weight loss. And of course, the medical profession had basically abandoned the entire field. It was crazy because there was no teaching. It was just basically us as doctors were just like, oh, watch your calories, exercise. But it wasn't helping people, right? And it wasn't really the right advice. So I started to think about other ways to treat it, including low carbohydrate diets. And also then I started to think about intermittent fasting. So fasting was in terrible disrepute at the time. Honestly, people thought I was, and I started using this in 2013, so it's close to 10 years. People thought it was the worst thing you could possibly do to your body. And, my advantage is that I understood the physiology and I could read the literature. So I said, well, what's so bad about it? Because as a physician, we actually tell people to fast all the time. If you go for surgery, you have to fast. If you go for colonoscopy, you have to fast. If you're post-op, you have to fast. If you do fasting blood work, you have to fast. So I actually tell people all the time to fast, and nothing bad happens, yet somehow people weren't supposed to do this. What was wrong with it? And at the same time, we knew that there was, it's literally the oldest dietary intervention in the book. We knew about it from, religions and the Bible and so on. So people have been using this for at least 2,000 years, which is important because if there was something wrong with it, we would have found out about it 2,000 years ago, right? So it wasn't some fad. Like some people say it's this big fad. It's like it's not a fad. It's been used for a long, long time. So then as I started researching, I started to understand that there's actually a huge number of advantages to fasting in the way it applies to weight loss, but also in terms of its health benefits outside of the weight loss. And what was striking for me anyway was that as I started to use it, some of the patients that I had with type 2 diabetes, the disease completely reversed. Like it was crazy. There was people I was treating for 10 years. I started them on a fasting regimen. Within a month, they were actually classified as non-diabetic. That's insane.
So, but let's take a pause right there. So, what is an example, a practical example for intermittent fasting? Because it's a term. You just said you made it practical for some of these patients. What's an example of a practical
fasting
fast?
is basically a period of time that you don't eat. If you think about the way a lot of people eat breakfast, lunch, dinner, it's about, say, 10 hours of eating and 14 hours of fasting. What you want to do if you want to try and lose weight is you simply extend that. So you might do 8 hours of feeding, which is called time-restricted eating, and 16 hours of fasting, or you can use something like 1 meal a day, which is like 23 hours of fasting and 1 hour of eating, for example. So it can be anything in between. So it's totally up to you. And this is what we do. So the difference between fasting sort of in the 60s, when there's a lot of studies on fasting, is when they did studies in the 60s, they were talking like 30 days of fasting sort of thing. We don't do that anymore. No, not even close, right? So 1 meal a day is
that's a protest fast.
yeah.
That's like a Gandhi,
Yeah, exactly.
I'm against violent fast. Here the fasting is I'm against disease,
Exactly.
and I'm actually
Exactly.
fasting for
And
my health.
and the thing is that people used to think that, oh, there's something really wrong with fasting. But when you think about it from a very simple standpoint, is there's actually nothing wrong. When you fast, your body, what you're doing is you're allowing your body to use the calories that have been stored away. So body fat is nothing more or less than a store of food energy or calories. If you're eating, you're not going to use the stores coming from your body, right? The body fat, because you have food coming in. So you're going to use the energy coming from your food. It's only when you don't eat that your body then gets the signal to start using calories that are stored in your body fat. So you're in fact using your body fat for precisely the reason that you have it. Like the body fat's not there for looks, it's there for you as a source of calories. So therefore, let your body use it. Give it the time. I'm not saying it's easy or fun, right? That's not what I'm saying at all. It's actually very difficult and not that much fun. But if you are, unhealthy, if you really want to lose weight, this is a reasonable option for you to try.
And I love the fact that you said, it actually activates your body to do what it's supposed to do. The fat energy. The other things that Mr. Fasting does, it's kind of a reset. So we know that for the stem cells in your body that actually are responsible for regenerating your health continuously, including the immune system, when you actually fast, you are actually just triggering your immune system to kind of reset itself. And that's a good thing. You don't want actually your immune system to be the same old worn out immune cells that have been around all the time. You want to refresh. It's kind of like shutting down your hard drive and every now and then restarting it kind of clears the decks and you get a kind of fresh crop. So that's one of the things it does. The other thing that, because I did a lot of cancer research, we found surprisingly that actually restricting calories and going to intermittent fasting actually can contribute to cutting off the blood supply feeding cancers. And so here's another reason how you can eat or not eat to be able to interfere with the disease without, that this is completely in parallel to whatever it is the oncologist or the endocrinologist might recommend for you to do, or the infectious disease specialist or the cardiologist. So I think that this is where, what's great, what I love about kind of how you got into this, Jason, is that, you were treating patients, you observed something that other people were not really thinking about. You reflected on how it made sense physiologically, meaning how the body's hardwired, and then you tested it out and found that it actually could be helpful. So what are some of the diseases besides body fat that you write about in your book, The Obesity Code? I mean,
Yeah,
obesity is one
so
thing. What are some of the other
there's
diseases?
actually a lot, and there's a huge number of advantages to intermittent fasting. So type 2 diabetes is the other one. So I wrote a book called the Diabetes Code, which is also talking about how it can really help your type 2 diabetes, really through weight loss. But essentially, it's very simple. If you don't eat, your body is going to start using up some of that blood glucose. And the whole disease is that there's too much of this blood glucose. So as you burn it all off, the disease essentially just goes away, which is amazing, because type 2 diabetes is actually a huge risk factor for so many diseases: heart attacks, strokes, cancers, blindness, amputation, kidney disease. So there's a ton. Infections, diabetic foot infections are like the worst things you'll ever see, right? So the diabetes, it's a huge important topic. But on top of that, there's actually so much other. So cancer, you mentioned, and I wrote a book also called The Cancer Code, which is about not just about nutrition, but also about how cancer develops and what is cancer. But there are ways to impact it, because the diet turns out to be a huge part of the risk of cancer. So if you look at, and they've done these when they look at attribution risk, they look at the what contributes to the causes of cancer. The biggest one is tobacco at about 35%. The diet, it's actually about the same. It's about 30%, and way above anything else. Genetics is like 5%. All those carcinogens, maybe 2%. So diet is a massive contributor to cancer risk. And you see that because now a lot of cancers, the common ones, colon cancer, breast cancer, are actually classified as obesity-associated cancer. So huge important topic. People also look at autoimmune diseases, and you talked about resetting the immune system, which is exactly what the body does, actually. And that's why if you look at a lot of religious sort of fasting, it's just that. Once a year, they're like, okay, let's do a big fast and reset, right? It's the same idea. And there's this process called autophagy, which is probably very instrumental. And this is a relatively recent phenomenon that's been understood. And when you fast, what happens is that your body actually starts to break down some of these proteins. And you might think, oh, breaking down, that's really bad. That's what people used to think. But in fact, what happens when you break it down is that your growth hormone's also very high. So then when you start to feed again, remember, it's a cycle, feeding and fasting. Then what you've done is you've gotten rid of the old junky stuff, and you're going to rebuild the new stuff. So
It
yeah,
is like a spring cleaning for your body that allows you to actually have a
exactly.
nicer home to actually live in. And the clutter actually kind of metaphorically builds up until it causes a problem, which can be disease. And so house cleaning, reorganizing, kind of getting rid of the stuff you don't want to have. So autophagy, it's basically the process of just breaking down, cleaning up, clearing out the stuff that the old and in with the new. It's kind of it's a way of bringing forth your New Year's resolution. So I love the fact that you've kind of harnessed this process and really interconnected everything around how the body actually is designed to be able to function. So you're not talking about introducing something abnormal. You're talking about really uncloaking something that's completely normal and actually using it for your own benefit. So, look, I want to just take a moment to talk about your book, The Obesity Code. What does somebody get out of it when they read the book?
Yeah, it's
Why should
a
somebody pick
sort
up
of
the
a
book?
scientific exploration of sort of what makes us gain weight, because there's this idea that it's just about calories. And I think it's quite mistaken, actually, because the calories argument sort of completely ignores human physiology. That is, our body has no sensors for calories, or your body doesn't know if what you're eating has calories or not. What your body does is it responds with hormones. So when you eat two foods, one of which, say you eat cookies, which is tends to be fattening, and on the other side you eat, say, broccoli, which is not particularly fattening. The minute you eat those foods, the hormonal response in your body is completely and utterly different. So you're going to give instructions. Remember, hormones are just instructions. You're going to give your body different instructions. So if the cookies, insulin's going to spike way up. You're telling your body with that to say, hey, store all of those calories as fat, because that's what the instructions you gave it to. So if you take 100 calories, your body can choose to burn it or it can store it, right? You want to give the instructions to burn it. But if you're eating cookies and you're spiking up your insulin way up because of the sugar and all the refined carbohydrates, you're actually giving the body the opposite instructions. You eat the broccoli, you don't get those instructions, so your body's just going to burn it off as energy, right? And that's good. So all that implication is that some foods are more fattening than other foods, which is just pure common sense, right? Your grandmother would have told you you're an idiot if you think that cookies and broccoli are the same. There's nothing alike about them because your body responds to them differently. So it's not just about the calories. In fact, that's probably the least important. The most important, it's the instructions to your body as to what to do with those calories. So that's sort of what I talk about in the book, and that's
Right.
how you can use diets like, cutting out sugar and cutting out, refined carbohydrates and intermittent fasting to fix those instructions to your bodies, fix that sort of hormonal milieu that is going to allow you to lose weight. Because the way we've been doing it, which is just purely counting calories, and remember, this is the advice that we grew up on,
Yeah.
it didn't work. It doesn't work.
Yeah, no, I think that's so great that you've been able to share that. So where can people find out more about
Yeah,
you,
so you can get the
and where
book
can people get
anywhere.
the book?
Amazon is available. Bookstores, it's available, and you can also find out more information. You can follow me on Twitter. That's Dr. Jason Fung, and I have a YouTube channel which has a lot of videos that anybody can watch on fasting and weight loss and so on. Just look under my name, Jason Fung, and you should be able to find it.
Well, that's great. I love every time that you talk to me about the way that you think about fasting, the way you think about obesity, the way you think about disease reversal. So I encourage everybody who's watching to go out and buy his book, The Obesity Code. This is extremely important because, what I always say is when it comes to food and health, it's not just about the food, it's about how your body responds to what you put in. How you eat. And I think all these things, really at the end of the day, help us. And I'm going to be talking more about this during my last masterclass of the month, which is actually going to be this coming Monday, January 31st at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Please register for it. It's in a link in my bio. And Dr.
Thank you
Jason
so
Fung,
much,
thank
Will.
you so
Great
much for
talking
coming
to
on.
you. Bye.
Good to talk to you. Bye now.